In every generation, many are called, but few choose the path of faith and perseverance to take their promised land. So what would happen if the pioneers of one generation took time to speak into the lives of the next? Would their insight and vision equip us, the younger generation, for our journey? I decided to find out.
Session 6, our final session on the Pioneer film. It's very simple. I just sat down with some of the Pioneer artists and said, if there was one thing that you could tell us, that you could share with the next generation, what would that be?
To me, it really basically comes down to the fact that there is a true God, there is a living God. We live, move, and have our being in Him simply because He loves us. And I don't believe anyone's a mistake. I really feel that we're here for a purpose, and it's to be an extension of His love to one another. And I think art is a great avenue, it's a great tool to communicate the love of God.
You and you alone are the reason I draw breath. It is you that I will love for 1,000 summers.
If you could share one nugget of wisdom with an aspiring Christian artist, what would that be?
You need to make sure this is what God's calling you to do and not what you want to do. Now, obviously, when I started out, I wanted to do this. I wanted to minister and share, but if I hadn't been absolutely certain that God wanted me to do it, I wouldn't have done it. There's a marvelous book that I ask every young person who's thinking about getting into the ministry to read. It's called Experiencing God. That book is so essential, I believe, for people to read and study and literally consume and make it a part of their being. As far as knowing the signs to know whether this is you or God. I think it does an excellent job of that.
You need to really, first of all, seek God in regard to your gifts and callings. What is it God's gifted you with that is your primary gift? Is it music, or are you a great preacher? Or could you potentially be a great teacher? Because you need to develop all the gifts that God's given you and figure out where music fits into your overall gifts and callings. I always use the example of Tom Stipe. He had the group Country Faith back in the early 70s. It was one of the Maranatha groups, and he was a Bible teacher. And so he'd get off the road for 2 months with his group, and he'd feel conflicted, and he'd go do a Bible study for 2 months. Well, he wound up now. He's the pastor of his own Calvary Chapel in the Denver, Colorado area, and he's got his own organ on stage. He can play whenever he wants. He doesn't have to play, and he can, exercise that gift when the opportunity arises. But now he's a pastor, and he gets to preach every week. So he kind of identified that those two strong giftings were in his life and figured out a way to facilitate both of them. My counsel would be to really figure out the way you can be most effective overall as a minister in your life, the high calling of your life. What is that? When I did that, I hadn't done that for 10 years as a Christian. I was just sort of writing everything that came to my mind and kind of putting out these records of these random songs that I got. And in 1980, I started to focus a little more. And what do I do best? What kind of song do I write the best? What do I communicate best through what God's given me? And that helped a lot to kind of like sort of become more of a sharpshooter than shooting some buckshot in the air and hoping you hit something.
That's right. Bust out your windows, jimmy all your logs. Listen to the whisper when the spirit talks.
It's crucial to find your identity and your security as God's child. It's really not about what the public will think of you, because they're fickle with short attention spans. It's not about what the press will think of you. At the end of the day, It's God's opinion of your heart and the focus of your heart that counts. And there might be times when it's just kind of a musical train wreck up on stage. You come off stage thinking, well, we knocked the polish off it tonight, didn't we? That's just going to happen sometimes. The fact of the matter is, you can't live and die with that. That's not reality. Reality is God still loves you anyway. And that's so precious, especially in the midst of failure. Ain't no preparation for success like failure. And that's true. That's true. The other thing, perhaps even more crucial, is that though you're the guy standing on stage in the spotlight, you have to come to that foundational spiritual reality that it's just not about you. We are blessed as people in music ministry to be conduits for God's love. We're just the channel. So you know where the gifts come from. You got to remember that, and remember who you serve, and let the Lord speak through your life, speak through your songs the way He will. Don't be deceived by the spotlight or the applause. It's not about you. And when you really get that and you own that on a heart level, then you can enjoy the experience to its fullest.
All I have ever needed, your hands, your great big hands have already provided. I don't want to sound super spiritual, but I'm going to give the answer that I think means the most to me. And that is, if you want to be great in God's kingdom, learn to be a servant. I was on a cruise a few years ago. It was mostly foreigners that worked on this ship. And except for maybe a few people that were Americans that worked in the front office and things like that. And so I saw this guy buffing one of the brass rails one day, and he was just meticulous. I mean, he was getting every smudge, every smear. He was shining that brass rail until it shined like new money. And I was coming down the steps, and so I stopped to ask him about him working on the cruise ship. And I asked him, I said, where are the Americans? Do y'all make, good money on the ship? And he said, yeah, we make good money. It's a nice career. We get to travel, see the world. I said, well, where are the Americans? And he said something I will never forget. He said, the reason why there are no Americans on the ship is because he said the cruising industry is an industry of service. And he said Americans don't want to serve. They want to be served. And boy, that just pierced my heart. It pierced my heart. And Jesus has not called us to be served. He has called us to serve. And I'll tell you, if you learn to serve, if you have a heart of a servant, even if you struggle, but if you get it, if you get, Jesus, I just want to serve you. I just want to bless you, and I want to bless people. If you want to serve Jesus, I promise you, He will exalt you.
When we go to a church, we're not coming in trying to big note ourselves and say, we've got a lot to offer you guys. We tell that to all our band members. We say, hey, we're here to serve the church. And we talk about these principles on a pretty regular basis.
So when you have performed the same song several times on stage, it's a song that you wrote, a song that has a lot of deep meaning and has moved a lot of people in a special way. Does it ever get repetitive? Does it ever get old? I guess also the same way it would be with shows. Do you go out and is it just kind of like, oh, here we go again, another night, another show, or is it still exciting? Does God still just move in you every time you're up there? Obviously not every time, but is there still a lot of significant meaning to what you do?
Absolutely, especially in my solo shows, and I do my whole thing with the loops and everything and create spontaneously. So I'm basically, even though I'm doing songs I've done for years, there's a new expression, it's a new atmosphere. It's a different audience, perhaps. So it doesn't really feel old to me. It just feels like a privilege and honor to do it.
I've never seen a crooked sinner that couldn't be forgiven from his shame.
Personally, I'm just as excited, if not more excited. In fact, actually, to be honest, I'm more excited serving the Lord today than I was 43 years ago when I started. Because, first of all, when I get, on a plane or get my car to go somewhere, part of the task is the adventure of getting there, the people you meet in the airport, the people you meet in the plane next to you, the connections you make with people like that. I look at every opportunity as just a gift.
I've sung We Are the Reason thousands upon thousands and thousands of times, and my audience expects it. And when they come to one of my concerts, if I don't do it, I always have throngs of people coming up complaining. Well, I'm not singing it for me now, but I make sure that it's something that I know ministers to people. So my satisfaction sometimes is not, well, I love singing my song. My satisfaction is I am singing something that is really ministering to people.
Well, it would be disingenuous of me to say that every night is just fresh and fancy. When I start to feel dry and like I'm going to work, I say to myself, well, everyone's got to go to work, buddy, This is your ministry, this is your calling, this is your job. You're going to work tonight. Because I learned years ago never to walk through a concert, never to give into self-pity and say, I don't feel good tonight, or I'm lonely, I'm homesick. Just let me warn you folks, you get into that mindset when you go on stage, it will be the longest night of your life for you and the audience. They'll be wanting to find things to chuck at you because they'll sense that. But actually also when I found myself saying, okay, so you're a little road weary and it's a little dry, that's when I go to God in a more sincere way and say, look, I know this is not about me and I need a fresh touch from you. So would you please just help me to get out of your way, and would you show up and show off tonight? And he's faithful to do that because he's faithful.
One of my favorite stories was Sammy Davis Jr. He only had one #1 song his entire career, and it was Candyman from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He hated that song, and in fact, his record company and producer had to almost force him to record it in the first place. And they kept telling him, this is a smash hit, and he kept going, it's stupid. But he went ahead and recorded it, sort of as an afterthought. The song ended up a #1 song, the biggest hit of his career, and he refused to sing it in concert because he hated it. And I'm going, I cannot think of any bigger nightmare than to refuse to play your biggest song of your career for your audience, many of whom came to hear you sing that song, and refuse to do it, and or go on and sing it when you hate it the whole time, grinding your teeth. What a nightmare. So you want to make sure that anything that you sing or record or whatever is something that has power and a message and something that you yourself love. If you don't love it, don't do it, So when I would get ready to make an album, I went to extremes to make sure that every word in every song meant something to me, and that I had a meaning there, and that I understood what that meaning was, and I believe without a shadow of a doubt I was encouraging and ministering other people and worshiping God at the same time. And that way, if I ended up having to sing that song for 37 years, I wouldn't be constantly gnashing my teeth together, if you know what I'm saying. So you don't get tired of it if they're great songs. That's the key to a great song.
One of the artists that we were privileged to film was a man named Paul Clark. And actually, my brother and my dad and I all went up to his house in Kansas City. And while we were filming upstairs, the snow started falling. And it was just the coolest thing, these big old flakes. I'm from Texas, so that's really big to me. And just got to sit with him and enjoy his wisdom and everything that he shared. I know it's going to be really cool and special for you as we just sit and listen and just soak in some of the wisdom from the pioneer artists on session 6. What is the one thing that you would like to say?
My father was my best friend, probably. Growing up, I certainly gave him lots of trouble. He was a lawyer, and I broke the law, but he was a Marine in World War II in the South Pacific Theater. He taught me something as a young man about his experience as a Marine in the South Pacific that was war-related. When they take a beach and they take an island, the command to him as a first lieutenant was to build a tent city and build it with the integrity and the quality that they spend the rest of their life there, but be ready to leave in 5 minutes. And I think that's the way to live the Christian life. We build with permanence. We build with that mentality that this is the most important thing I can possibly do. Be ready to split in 5 minutes and move on to the next thing. We're stewards. It's a short-term lease. So be a good steward of what God's called you to do. Be a warrior. Be a lover of God. With all your heart, follow Jesus Christ. He will blow your mind with joy and with deep-rooted love, acceptance, all the things that you want as a human being. But more than that, the joy of serving the Lord is to build with permanence, but be ready to give it all up in a heartbeat.
I've never seen a straight river flowing from the land or the sea, up and down and all around. God's finger seems to carve them all with ease. Why do some people and some preachers on TV try to sell the world that God's so straight in need? I've never seen a square mountain, no, rising from the coast or the plains, up and down and all around. God's finger never carves them all the same. So why do some people and some preachers on TV try to sell the world that God's so straight and neat? Well, the sun, the sky, every morning, well, it never looks the same from day to day. Oh, could this be a lesson or a warning? The power of our God cannot be tamed. Beyond every star in creation, and beyond every thought that one could dream. Oh, it takes a divine imagination to build a plan for man to be redeemed. 'Cause the star of his creation in that garden, it took a spill, so he sent his son to die on Calvary's hill. I've never seen a crooked sinner that couldn't be forgiven from his shame. Up and down and all around, God's finger carved my heart with Jesus' name. 'Cause I'm a crooked sinner, saved by grace and mercy. His word has come as truth to set me free. His word has come as truth to set me free. I've never seen a straight river, no, no.
You came walking through my door. You threw flowers on my floor.
I had mentors before mentors was the thing. I didn't know that. They were just beautiful, educated, godly, strong spiritual people. And they helped me in my walk. If you don't have someone that you look up to or that is deep in spirit, go before the Lord and say, Lord, I need, as they say, Jesus with skin on. I need someone to come alongside of me and say yes or no. It's so important.
We were talking about mentoring from one aspect, which can be hard, is that sometimes your mentor will disappoint you. You may have someone that has been a spiritual father or mother to you, and then they fail in some aspect of their Christian life. You're not alone in this if you're experiencing it. I've experienced it. Many, many people have experienced it. And it's extremely painful and difficult, but it has a purpose in that it brings us back to the basic of I'm really following Jesus, not anybody else, and He will never fail me or forsake me, no matter if even my most admired spiritual leader fails me. Jesus will never fail me. He's going to make a way. But sometimes we have to re-experience that. We may be an experienced Christian, but then all of a sudden everything like the bottom just sort of seems to drop out. But that's when we go back and remember God loves me and He has a wonderful plan for my life.
Keep pressing onward beyond your fear. Only the Father goes before you to your own frontier. You're a pioneer. Uncharted wilderness stretches before you, and you thrive on going where no one has gone. Still it gets lonely when darkness deepens, so sing by the fire until the dawn. You travel light, you travel alone, and when you arrive, nobody knows but the Father in heaven. He is glad you can go. For those who come after you will need the road. Pioneer, pioneer, keep pressing onward beyond your fear. Only the Father goes before you to your own frontier. You're a pioneer, and what you have done bigger and better and faster than you. But you can't look back. No, you gotta keep pressing through. There's a wilderness pathway, and it's calling you. Calling you clear. Keep pressing onward. You can't stay here. Only the Father goes before you to your own frontier. You're a pioneer. Only the Father goes before you to your own frontier. You're a pioneer.
Well, as producer of this film, I hope it's been entertaining and enjoyable to watch, but my heart is so much more than that. My prayer is that you will not just kind of bask in the glow of what other people have to say or their ministries, but that you will actually capture the heart of what they're saying and carry their legacy to the next level as you do what God has called you to do in your generation. That you can also stand up and move in your gift and calling, that you may also be a pioneer.
If there's any word I could say to any young person today that was listening, finish strong. You're not guaranteed your days. Keith Green, that was short. I can name off names that you might have read about, heard of people that whose lives were cut short. You don't know your days. Make them count. And for me, I want to finish strong. So to finish strong, since you don't know where the finish line is, you better be going strong all the time. If the Lord said, how do you want to die? I'd probably get greedy and say, in the middle of a song, singing and then whomp over. I hope that the paint's burned off, that the hood's up, the hoses are steaming, the tires are bald, that this tent named Paul Clark is used up. And I move on to a place that I can't imagine how incredible it's going to be.